All right, you guys know the drill. 10 a.m. on a Wednesday, which means it's time for Best Ball Breakfast. Back-to-back champs. The first one with the defending Best Ball Mania 3 champ, Pat Kerrane, and then Rotoviz is Shawn Siegele swinging by. These drafts have been wild. They have been wide receiver filled, but we've been having lots of fun navigating these tricky rooms. Let's do it here on Best Ball Breakfast.
Oh, another Influencer 101 for the backward hats, bro. Rigged!
Zach Ertz with no Tyler Algier bringback? Yikes.
You reached around for correlation? That's a no-no. You ADP bros disgust me. How about you just live a little?
Handcuffing might actually be a way to get unique if the field's avoiding it.
The Wi-Fi at this resort is a disaster?
These fucking streamers don't have player takes. What if a piss boy draft is the room you need?
Oh!
My guy AJ in Carolina wants you to roll in like Ali. The champ is here. Have you thought about going kind of full heel and stop being the likable winner and being kind of, the asshole winner?
Well, I'll tell you what, if you move this up another hour, it might be easier for me because I'm already, I'm not a morning person. So if you put this at 8 in the morning, then yeah, I'll turn into a heel.
Yeah, 10 a.m. Pat. I mean, come on. How late are you up till these days?
Not that late, but it takes me like a minute, in the morning to just become human again.
Geez, Pat, I've already lived an entire life. April was up at 6. We went on an hour walk. I've been to the post office. I've had, I've been to the post office.
What is it? 1990? What are you talking about?
I have to get something certified mail. Let's not get into it. Yes. So Pat, must be nice. Yes. Good morning to you, sick fucks. Chipsy saying it the best. Here we go. How is everyone doing in the chat? Pat, how is your best ball play transpiring? Even though it's only been a week in between every best ball breakfast show we do, it does feel like it's been a year in best ball years. It
really has. The puppies that I mentioned last week are going good. I really kind of obviously fast drafts are the best, but slow drafts have their place. I'm in on the massive slow draft move as long as they're not going to hit me with the 1 hour clock at the end, which I don't think they will because there's plenty of summer left.
Yeah, I did want an update on. Do you find yourself like did you stagger or cascade your entries into them, or did you like blitz it, like registered them all at once? So you're like picking at relatively the same range in all of them.
So I was doing some fast drafts and I got up to like 20 fast drafts before I gave up. And during that period, I put in probably like 10 to 20 slow drafts as well. But then at the end, I was like, I'm not getting there. So I did like 110 slow drafts, like literally just all at the same time. So most of them are all just in the same period, but it's kind of helpful to do it that way because they're all in kind of the same pocket. And right. Some are a little behind. There's some are like 2 rounds behind, but you're kind of like in the flow of that particular part of the board.
Have you found yourself gravitating to similar structures in a lot of these? Or are you kind of all over the board with what you're doing in them?
I'm sort of like, there's sort of one of two. I'll either kind of really push and try to get my wide receivers and have at least like 5 through like 7 to 8 rounds. And then there's some that I've pushed it the other way, and I'll have like 2 wide receivers through 5 rounds. And those are really tough. There's some that I only have 3 wide receivers through 7 rounds. It makes me a little queasy. But I feel like, it's the puppy. You got to be willing to experiment a bit. So I'm trying to. And like part of me too is like, how big of an advantage are these early running backs?
Right.
After doing a lot of the stuff with the puppy, I'm not as convinced they're as big of an edge as we were thinking.
Yeah, I've been thinking that through too. I ripped a Chihuahua this morning on my walk, and I did a 0 RB team with the elite onesies. So I did Kelsey, Josh Allen in a 2-7-7-2 build, 0 RB, 7 wide receivers through the first 10 rounds. And I'm never able to do that in these rooms, but it does feel good to skip over what you're kind of hinting at, which some of these guys might be more trappy than we'd like to admit.
I think so. Yeah, I'm starting to kind of get the legendary running back analysis at least the early stages start to get that in shape. And it's actually like a really weak year for backs in terms of the legendary upside. You're looking for specific things there based on the guys who've hit 23 plus PPR points since 2000. Yeah, Jamar Chase for sure here.
Yeah, for the audio listeners, I did register for the draft. We're underway. 1-3, Jamar Chase falls, but keep going, and then we'll talk about this.
And that's just one way to look at the running back landscape. It's sort of like how similar do these backs look to the guys who've been the true league winners in years past, but they basically don't look very similar. A lot of the guys who, you would expect to be those guys in terms of the receiving element, which is massively important, are older. CMC's a year older. Eckler's like old now. And so there's some major red flags there. You also have issues with, some of the guys not really seeing the huge workloads in the receiving game, like Pollard, like Ramondre. So they all, Pollard is a little bit of a guy who I'm willing to go against whatever my stats are telling me, because we know how talented he is and the situation has changed dramatically. But if they were to sign somebody or bring back Zeke, he would be in a committee again, and that's not really how you find one of these massive seasons. So I'm actually starting to feel like maybe these are more of sort of late second round, third round type of bets, where if you get a running back who's just really strong for you all year in the third round, that's pretty huge. You don't necessarily, in best ball especially, that's pretty huge. You don't need to necessarily be shooting for the moon in the third round with a running back. I think in the first or second round, you probably do. And so, yeah, maybe I'm getting a value in the third round at running back, but not like this huge value. And then do I want to be taking that running back in the second round too?
I think it's an interesting thing what you're describing, because basically what you're saying is maybe the running back prices are finally efficient and they're fairly priced in the third, but because we're so anchored to those typical running backs being in the first, we're psyops into thinking it's this huge value when maybe they're just efficiently priced and you don't need to be going out of your way to slam them in every draft.
That's what I'm starting to feel. Yeah. That's a very succinct way to put it. I do think that if he's healthy, Breece Hall is an exception. Breece Hall comes out as the number one back in the analysis. He basically checks every box. It's just that he's coming off a torn ACL. So I am still taking a ton of Breece Hall. We'll do Breece Hall check every week. Still jamming Breece Hall. But to me, I'm like, if I can get the, who's the back who is a big discount in terms of his profile if healthy. And to me, in third round Breece Hall, especially now late third round Breece Hall, 3-4 turn Breece Hall is, I think, a massive discount if he's healthy. And so I'm kind of hitting that a lot.
And Breece is a guy that can move up based on news. Whereas I think about another back we like in Ramondre Stevenson. I feel like the market is just always going to be skeptical of a Bill Belichick running back in a way that, what news is going to move Ramondre up into the middle of the second round? I don't know if I see that. Actually getting some nice options here that we normally get. I kind of like the Olave. I know you're more into the premium double sometimes than I am, but what do you like here?
No, I like Olave a lot.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
I would be fine with Higgins if Olave's gone, but Olave, I've always kind of felt like Olave is really with this earlier crew of wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Sherman was talking early in the offseason, why aren't we taking Olave ahead of Garrett Wilson? And I was sort of just shut up and take Olave in the third round. What are you doing? But I still like Wilson more, but Olave, I don't think it's crazy to be I like Olave more than Wilson, and I think they are in the same tier.
Yeah. Yeah, this will be interesting. I talk a lot about my piss boy rooms, and the ones with Shawn have seemed to be out of control. This one feels very normalized. We even got a CMC sighting from the one hole, which we don't see at too many of these drafts. Eckler and Bijan both going in the top 9 picks. Don't normally see that. Barkley at 14, Chubb at 17, Pollard. So didn't get buried here at the beginning of the draft, where sometimes we can just wake up here and DK Metcalf's the best available pick at 22.
Yeah,
for wide
I
receiver.
hate being in that situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that situation, I would just double tap running back or take a quarterback.
Yeah. All right, so we're about to be on the clock here. Ramondre Stevenson and T. Higgins go to the 1 hole. We'll see what the 2 hole does. Both the elite quarterbacks, Hurts, Allen available. Jacobs, our guy, Breece Hall, Mark Andrews as well. I know you're high on him. How do you like playing this chunk of the board?
I would go Andrews or Breece here.
Yeah. I'm interested in that too. I do think with the Burrow, one thing to think through. So we have the CMC drafter here who took T. Higgins.
Right.
I don't think we're going to be able to let Burrow go past them twice at the 4-5 turn.
We'll have to take Burrow in the 4th. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, which pick? I want your preference. You want Andrews or Breece? Both seem fun here.
Let's go Breece.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you can't talk up Breece Hall and then not select it, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's just, the other thing is that Andrews I think Andrews is an awesome pick right now, but I think Pitts is an awesome pick right now. I think Goddard is a solid pick at the 6-7 turn. Sometimes he falls to the late 7th. I think Kittle, when he falls to the 6th, is a great pick. Hawkinson's starting to fall to the later 5th. I think he's a really good pick there. So like there's other ways to get really nice tight end values in these rooms. The 3rd round, unless you can get a really nice wide receiver value, but those are kind of drying up now. The 3rd round's really like the spot where you can get a really nice running back value. Like even Jacobs, I prefer Breece to Jacobs, but that in years past, he would be more like the 207 or something, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and you wind it back even further. The one I always use as an example is the Kenyon Drake year when he went to Arizona. He was getting drafted at the 1-2 turn. I mean, Jacobs and Kenyon Drake was not coming off the season that Jacobs did, when he was going there. So things have changed, and I'll talk about it a little with Shawn later too. And I highly recommend checking out his podcast with Gretsch. They went in depth about the dead zone and kind of some of these dynamics and how the board is just completely shifted from how much it has in previous years. So our team here to start: Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, Breece Hall. Love that start here. We continue to see the quarterbacks fall. Trev does get the premium double stack. AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts. Stubb takes Josh Allen unstacked. I've been really starting to like some of the unstacked Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes builds. And I have been playing the 3rd round through those guys when I'm in the middle and the Breece Hall Ramondres are off the board. How have you been handling kind of these shifting QB prices?
Yeah, my feeling is I'm not getting enough of them because I keep trying to still do it stacked, and I probably just need to start doing more on stacked Josh Allen in particular. Josh Allen's the guy I think the most underweight on, which I like Josh Allen, so I find that annoying. But it's hard to get. I'm not as high on Diggs. Like I like AJ Brown more than Diggs, which means I'm going to be a little bit underweight Diggs, which I'm okay with. But then I end up underweight Allen, which I'm not really okay with. So I think I just need to do more what you're doing.
Yeah, and I just quickly looked at my percentages. I'm even on the field with Hurts, which makes sense because he has 2 of the stacking partners early versus only having the 1. And then I'm, below on both Mahomes and Allen. And I think I'm still okay. If I just like fast forward to the end of the season and you told me I was at 5% Allen and 5% Mahomes, slightly under field, maybe 6%, I think I'm okay with that. I'm okay being slightly underweight the elite quarterbacks, but maybe I get up there a little bit more if they continue to fall and I continue to like some of the backdoor stack stuff.
Yeah, I'm just underweight on Hurts and Mahomes at 7% each. And then I'm at 2% Allen, but this is not including some puppies where I've taken them. So the puppy will help me get a little bit closer, but I'm still way too underweight Allen. The guy that I have a lot of in the puppies that I did is Lamar. And he's the one where if I end up I agree. If I end up like slightly underweight on the 3 elites, I think I'll be happy, but I want to be overweight Lamar because you're getting him like very easily at the, kind of the late 3rd into the early 4th. He usually doesn't fall quite this far, but I just think like at that point, there's a clear tier break, right? Like Andrews is usually already gone. The running backs are gone. Wide receiver tier broke, in my opinion, before Metcalf, and it doesn't really break again until a while. So I'm like, what's the opportunity cost has gone down significantly, and Lamar's got as high a ceiling as these guys.
Yeah. This is an interesting spot here as far as playing the Burrow stuff. You could also do a tactic that you've written about where you take DJ Moore and then we see would one of Burrow or Fields come back to us. I'm curious how you would want to play this. In ETN, not a bad value either. What do you think is optimal here?
I don't think we can use the tactic because there's no quarterbacks on the other side of the board.
Yeah.
So I think we should just take Burrow.
Take Burrow. Burrow's definitely not coming back the one hole.
He's not coming back from the one hole.
Yeah, it's I do like this price on ETN, but I think we don't mess with it. And there are other options here that we might like. Hawkinson goes, and I'll be curious to see.
We need them to bail us out a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, so Hawkinson goes. Okay, so will they go Fields, which I think that proves for us they were pretty clearly going to take Burrow there. And then we'll see if they go with the DJ Moore. They do the DJ Moore.
Yeah.
Man, I would be pretty excited to take ETN if he falls here.
I would also be happy with Mike Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Fifth round Mike Williams is pretty nice.
That's true. Yeah. And I know you like Ayuk as well, but we're going to have a crack at two nice values here. Wow. I think I'm
we got
partial
both
to the ETN, but how do you feel here?
You know, the room isn't as wide receiver heavy as we're used to, so
yeah,
I'd be okay with ETN. It's gonna be really tight from this point.
It's gonna be tight, but if you look at where we pick, so normally the threshold I use is like in normal rooms at the back end 83, 84, you're typically in like Ravens wide receiver, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Elijah Moore territory. In my piss boy rooms, it gets pissed up. There you go. Picks 70 and 75, we should be able to clip the end of the wide receiver range. I think.
Okay.
We'll see it. But man, the Breece Hall ETN combo of basically playing the double anchor through the dead zone is very fun after getting two elite wide receivers.
It's very fun with the Burrow Chase stack on top of that. That's very fun.
Pissed leg up. There is now more themes here of leg up. And now, Pat, I'm envisioning an alternate logo where there's like piss dribbling down the leg in your logo.
People have also pointed out that the Kadarius Toney clip was sort of a leg up preview. Yes. It was a foreshadowing because the legs were up.
God, yeah, you were always destined to win BBM. Your life is a movie, and there were all kinds of little foreshadows planted.
There's little Easter eggs throughout my real life.
Yeah, Kyle says, I don't understand the ETN fall, especially in what, again, I'm going to kind of call a normal room here. I am a little, is there any news-based stuff? Is Tank Bigsby getting hyped up in OTAs? I guess I've missed it.
Not that I've seen. I don't really get it either. I mean, there's definitely some reports that like Tank's clearly, in the lead to take over the number 2 duties and stuff. And then people are kind of speculating about what his role might be. But
yeah, I
think in some ways ETN's protected by the fact that like Tank is a lot like him. Like, it's kind of like ETN is a bit more of a 2-down running back than we were hoping he might be based on his receiving efficiency. We talked about this, I think, on ADP chasing, where he even like the Jaguars when they drafted him, like they took him because they didn't get Kadarius Toney and they were going to like turn him into this like receiving weapon or whatever. But he's actually more of kind of like an explosive rusher. He's a very consistent rusher, really good breakaway runner. He's more like Dalvin Cook than Alvin Kamara.
Right.
But Bigsby's also more of a 2-down guy. And he's not like a super powerful guy. He's, a little more slight. Like he's not like small. But anyway, I don't see what Bigsby's necessarily going to do better than ETN where he'd have to come off the field. He's more like an awesome handcuff.
And I do think we can still be honest with ourselves and say like ETN can fit a dead zone type back, but you're doing a little bit of IKB of the talent profile is good and this offense could be really good. And what turns a dead zone back into a legendary back? It's, well, they start catching passes at a high clip. Like, if that happened for Etienne and the Jags offense takes a leap, you could see him being a league winner. Doesn't mean there aren't risks, though. It's certainly possible. So yeah, we are starting to flirt with these wide receivers coming off the board. Pickens goes, Burks goes, Evans goes. I'm with you in not liking Tony. I'm happy to get Dotson or Quentin Johnston here, though.
I'd probably on Dotson.
Yeah.
Just like we need the points. Man, we got kind of brutalized there, huh?
I mean, I have Dotson in this same kind of tier with all of these guys, so it doesn't feel awful to me necessarily. But yeah, I mean, like Burks or Pickens falling.
It's just
there.
that run. It's just that run.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I thought maybe we had a chance, and then they all go flying off.
See, for me, when that run happens, normally I'm staring at Juju there and not Dotson.
Oh no!
That felt pretty good. That felt really good. So we'll see how this plays here. I do really like Quentin Johnston, and it's also kind of a fun levered bet in that we passed on Mike Williams for ETN too.
Oh, good point. Good point.
So our room here through 7. This is a very fun team. We got Joe Burrow stacked up with our 3rd overall pick, Jamar Chase. We got 2 double anchor RBs from the dead zone, Breece Hall and ETN. I just like saying dead zone to trigger people because it's the new 0 RB of like the ambiguous term that everyone defines differently. And our wide receivers along with Chase, Olave, Jahan Dotson, and Quentin Johnston, 4 wide receivers through 7, and just narrowly grabbed the end of that tier, it seems like.
The ETN stuff is weird to me, though. Like when you think about, okay, Travis Etienne's going in the 5th round here, and Najee Harris went in the 3rd. Like, how is Najee Harris more appealing than Etienne on any level?
I don't. Yeah, you're talking to the wrong guy to hype up Najee Harris. I mean, Najee feels like he should be going where Kenneth Walker goes. In that 5th round range.
Yeah.
And even then, I think
I have him in my rankings.
Najee. So you have, what is your Najee exposure right now?
I don't know that I've taken him once.
I took him once. I think I got an insane. I think I got him like literally in the 60s. Someone will have to check what it was.
I've taken him. I think probably once. I have $50 of exposure, so it's probably one chow because I'm at 0%. Yeah. I'm at 0%, even though I have taken him once.
Yeah. DFS 28 likes the start here. Chris Olave and Chase is a nasty combo. The chat loving the Chase Olave combo. Oh, Chris, do not lump Najee and ETN together. Not good at professional football. Now that's a pretty wild take, especially because they're really different running backs and really different profiles too of how they get there.
Well, I mean, yeah, they're different in that ETN's been good and Najee's been a disaster. I don't really even understand how you would lump them together. Like Etienne had one of the best success rates in the league last year, which is the NFL Next Gen version, which is I think a good indication that he's like kind of hitting the right holes, doing what he's supposed to do as a running back. He's not just kind of like the DeAndre Swift type of dude, but then he also had 263 rush yards over expected, which was the 2nd most in the NFL behind Nick Chubb. It was just ahead of Tony Pollard. Like, yeah, he was a really good running back last year. He's not been as much of a receiving back as we were hoping. They really didn't even use him that much to close the year, but he's a good runner. Like, yeah, and this is the only sample that we have on him since he didn't play as a rookie, but he was a really good prospect and just is coming off his first year in the NFL as a very impressive rusher. So to me, with Najee, who's yet to have a season with positive rush yards over expected, had a really poor success rate as a rookie, poor again as a sophomore, wasn't explosive entering the league, doesn't really do anything as a receiver. I mean, Najee's not really a starting level back in the NFL.
Yeah. And I mean, people are still chasing the one game where he caught 17 passes from Ben Roethlisberger, and Ben Roethlisberger is no longer in the league, and Najee Harris isn't a rookie who had a really long leash anymore. Right. All right, we're about to be on the clock at pick 94 here. Evan Ingram comes off the board. definitely a bit of a choose your own adventure range. What stands out to you here?
Nothing really jumps out to me. I mean, James Cook is interesting, but we don't necessarily need the running back. Cortland Sutton is a professional wide receiver, I guess. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm generally taking James Cook here, as you can
Let's
see
just
by
take
my
him.
exposure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm way overweight James Cook here. I'm with you though. I guess the only other thing you can do right is like if you wanted to set up like a Watson to Njoku thing there, you could do it. But yeah, I don't like much here.
Yeah, but with Burrow, like part of what you theoretically get with Burrow is that you don't have to do that. Although then you enter
Right.
a portion of the draft, there's like nothing else, so you might as
Mm-hmm.
well consider it. But
Yeah, and then like in this spot, Watson's still falling. But then you miss out on Elijah Moore, you miss out on Amari, you're gonna miss out on Njoku. And then you're looking at like DPJ and Jerome Ford with your Watson stuff.
we
Like
have a
if I'm gonna
Breece
make
bring back at least.
that's true. Yeah, I guess I wouldn't be entirely opposed to doing like just Njoku. And because we are going to have some other quarterback options later with Carr, with Howell, who I know you love. What do you think?
Yeah, Njoku works.
Yeah, I think just using that as I do like Freiermuth a lot too, but we don't have any Seattle on this team. I'm just seeing if there's anything else I'm missing. I mean, it would basically be if we wanted to grab like Charbonnet or Dillon.
Charbonnet or Dillon, yeah. But let's go Njoku.
Let's do Njoku here. So our team coming out of this 8-9 turn, Joe Burrow, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, James Cook, wide receivers, Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, Jahan Dotson, Quentin Johnson, tight end, David Njoku. So despite it being what I deemed a normal room, we are only going to come out of the first 9 rounds with 4 wide receivers, which could hurt, but we'll have to get creative again.
Yeah, this is when you have 2 wide receivers through 3 rounds, I feel like this almost always happens. Where you're like, I just feel like I'm weak at wide receiver and there's like no way for me to fix it now. Because you can't fix it with like Jameson Williams and Juju Smith-Schuster. Like those guys, I mean, Williams is a little bit of a different case, but like Juju, like he doesn't really give you anything you can't get like 4 rounds later.
Right. Yeah, and I'm trying to think, where, I guess it could have been you pass on the ETN value and you get Mike Williams. There's really no other decision point here where you look back and say, where do you go the other direction? It's basically just saying, hey, I can't afford the second anchor. Because the thing I normally have in my head is no more than 2 detours from wide receiver through 7 or 8. That's like my general heuristic. And so when you go Hall, Burrow, ETN, you're taking that 3rd detour and you're going to feel like this on your teams. I do think it's possible to recover. And I do think the way you recover is you beat people at other positions. We now need a top 5 tight end season from David Njoku,
or we just need ETN to be a 2nd round value. Like if Hall's healthy and Etienne's a 2nd round value, then we are okay. Yeah. And that's the thing that's tough about these rooms is that like, I think like Etienne is a value in the 5th round. Like I think that's just like a fact. So, but then the room's punishing you for taking the value, which like good for the room,
Yeah.
they should punish you.
We do see a ton of running backs and quarterbacks come off the board here in this 9th round. After we took Njoku, AJ Dillon, Zach Charbonnet, Alvin Kamara, Deshaun Watson, Samaje P. Ryan, Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins. We head to the 10th, Jared Goff, Damian Harris, Rashad Penny. This has been kind of a normal theme here where it's just like the pockets of the draft. Once those wide receivers come off the board, everyone's pivoting over to either getting their 1st or 2nd quarterback and then scooping up all of this running back value in this range.
Which is the right way to play it.
I need to do a little coffee here. I have not given the people their coffee pour, Pat. Spags gets scolded by the chat for talking over the coffee pours. Again, if you want to go full heel, you can, but I am going to pour here. Tyler Boyd does go off at 113. The chat was screaming for us to take Boyd. ahead of ADP there at pick 99. I don't think that was necessarily bad. We didn't even really consider it. I thought there was maybe 30% chance he comes back to us at 118. Normally he can be in this range. He does not. So we can talk through if that was a mistake. We do have all of the Leone targets at the top of the board. Juju, Allen Lazard. We could play a little mini with Eli Mitchell and Jahan Dotson. What jumps out to you?
We could go Rodgers and then see if Lazard comes back around. If he doesn't, who cares? Because it's
I think I'd rather do Lazard and then see if Rodgers comes back, honestly, because we have
okay. The guy at the 2 doesn't have a quarterback.
Yeah.
So,
yesterday I did Juju 10 picks past ADP and the chat lost their shit. Do your thing, chat. I just took Allen Lazard. I believe my first share of Allen Lazard here, 10 picks past ADP.
The way we did it is, I think, the sharper way to do it, but I just don't like Lazard. So I'm like, we also, Pat, we got to be careful. Rodgers and Burrow have the same bye. So we might want to pass on Rodgers there. I kind of like the Eli Mitchell Dotson thing, and we could be getting close to being done there. Or if you want to take another Juju and just go all Leone on this team. Let's go Eli.
Yeah, that seems funner.
Wow,
so we
ended up with Lazard without Rodgers. What a brutal.
Well, we did fully think through the buy thing. I guess we could have ended up doing a 3 quarterback build with Burrow and Rodgers, but it seems like a lot of capital to spend, and that would also involve you capitulating on Sam Howell as the QB3 in this room.
Right. Sam Howell is what is it, week 7? No, I think he'll probably be the starter still in week 7. So
that is the funniest element too about some of the bye week stuff. I mentioned this where when I took Baker Mayfield on a bye week team with Jalen Hurts and that, it's like, is Baker even going to be the quarterback by week 10? Like, I'm selecting him just to cover this 1 week, and I don't even know if he's going to be the quarterback by then.
So Washington has a week 14 bye. That seems like a good week to fire Ron Rivera. And then Bieniemy takes over during the bye. So and that would just be also like really truly hilarious if Sam Howell started all season and then got benched during the week 14 bye.
Yeah.
I mean,
what Jarrett asking, no love for Zay Jones. I guess my love for him, well, first of all, he went 1 pick before us. If he was there on the board, I guess you could have like squinted and made an argument for a little correlation with Etienne on the Jags. But Zay Jones strikes me still as one of the more overpriced wide receivers in this range. Like, at least when we take Lazard or Juju, you're getting some volume, right? Like with Zay Jones, what are you hanging your hat on? It's only contingent upside if there's an injury.
Yeah. Well, I think you could say, there were points last year where Zay Jones was really kind of like the 1B. And there were points where I was like, it's not clear to me that Christian Kirk is like the clear number 1 wide receiver here. Like that was sort of the narrative at times. And I don't know that it was fully supported by their targets and everything. And so we're very confident that Kirk is going to be like way ahead of Jones. Maybe he won't be, maybe it's that. Maybe that Kirk is like the really bad pick. Or maybe Ridley just doesn't really have it anymore. There's certain ways where Jones is an okay pick, but it doesn't strike me as a particularly high upside pick. So,
yeah. Zach says, do you know you're getting volume with Lazard? I'm just playing it how the market is. So Zay Jones is the 4th pass catcher off the board for the Jags. Allen Lazard is the 2nd pass catcher off the board for the Jets. If you go look at any projection system, Lazard will project for more work than Zay Jones.
I have them about even though. I think they're because we just like there is uncertainty with the Jaguars in a way that like Garrett Wilson kind of sucked some uncertainty out of the room with the Jets. Like things really have to be strange for him not to be soaking up a ton of volume where. Like, I don't think Kirk is all that good. He's okay, but I don't think he's like way better than Zay Jones. So there's like paths where it's just like, wow, Zay Jones is more involved than we thought.
Here, this is the cope I need for the Allen Lazard pick. Similar to our taking QJ when you pass on Mike Williams. Easy points out Lazard on a Olave team is leverage over the Garrett Wilson thing of saying those guys should be ADP brothers as well. So you take Olave and then grab Lazard. There you go.
So this is specifically leverage on like a Sam Sherman tweet from February.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know how that wins us any money though.
We need to, when you take Allen Lazard, you can't just take him and move on. You do have to justify it and cope through it. You do. There for the people.
No, he's a prospect.
Speaking of cope, let's look at this this board here at wide receiver. Our quarterback stuff. We could. I don't mind Rashee Rice here as a bring back on our.
It makes a lot of sense to
stuff.
Me.
Yeah. I've been taking Richie James and Justin Ross at the end of the drafts. Not that that precludes us from doing that, but Rashee in this build with Burrow seems to make sense. And then would you want to consider Derek Carr here with Olave and basically stack up both of our alpha wide receivers?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
I'm trying to think. Yeah.
We scroll down a little bit.
Yeah.
So did Irv go?
No. Yeah, he did. I didn't even notice that. Normally he is always right here in this pocket. Where did he go? Where is Irv?
He went at the other
Irv
turn.
went at 132. Wow. Yeah, that is rich. I believe his ADP is 151 because I took him. Yeah, 151.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. I was kind of had Irv penciled in here, but yeah. All right.
Derek Carr, also a fun one. You get the tight end options late as well, to round out a tight end room with Njoku. So that gives us an avenue to a double stack. Rashid Shaheed there too. So I kind of like Carr unless anything else jumping out. Yeah.
No, I like it.
And it's one of those things where it's not like I don't go out of my way to do it, but it does feel good when it's like you've made big bets on Olave and Chase. And so to be able to stack those guys up with their quarterback always feels good.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, like, to me, the big moment of the draft is what if we had thought to go Njoku over James Cook and then Watson? And then we'd have it would be like Watson and let's say like Roshan versus James Cook and Carr.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think those are pretty fair 2v2s.
Yeah.
The thing I think about sometimes, and I think about this with basically all positions and whether it means going 6 wide receivers through 6 rounds, whether it means going hyper fragile with your first 3 picks or getting 2 elite quarterbacks, is not even like setting aside the structural stuff, whether you spent too much draft capital, boxing yourself out of a value faller later or just more optionality during dead spots of the draft. Like I like that we gave ourselves a chance to, hey, this was a kind of a flat spot here, and Derek Carr definitely made the most sense for this team. Whereas if you take a Deshaun Watson or an Anthony Richardson earlier, then you're boxed out of that kind of optionality. And then maybe you're reaching for a pick you don't feel is good about. So that's the only reason I don't like going super extreme at any position and being done is because now you're taking a position completely off your board.
Yeah, it's true. And we kind of, that is also one of the things that is tough about taking the third detour as well, because you can't take another detour like the tight end came back to us, right? We had Pitts as an option available to us in the late 6th, I think, when we took Dotson, which, I mean, that's pretty nice, but you can't even consider it when you have 2 wide receivers to that point, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. You think about it a lot, those detours. And, I'm starting to now think through how very specific team bets impact certain structures. So like the obvious one, the Giants and the Chiefs, right? Both of them have a plethora of stacking options in the double-digit rounds. So I'm like more willing to take an additional detour on a Mahomes team or make sure I'm going to get a Daniel Jones setup, knowing that I'm going to have a lot of those options. Like there's 3 Giants wide receivers I could take for cheap, and that's going to get a room of 5 wide receivers to 8 very quickly. And so that's one thing I'm starting to really think through of, if I'm going to make this detour, which specific team becomes more of a target just based on where the players fall.
I like that a lot. I have one of those too. I'll discuss one more. What do we like?
So I was bummed that Rashid Shaheed didn't fall. We missed that by 3 picks here. I'm definitely coming around on the Taysom Hill stuff, especially on a Saints bet team. DPJ as kind of building out a Cleveland bet. What do you see here? Curtis Samuel building out the Washington bet.
If we take Taysom, we could probably be done, and we don't have Irv and Taysom stacked in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say Taysom makes sense.
Yeah, the only thing would be, I think there's a chance that Taysom comes back if you take DPJ, whereas DPJ might. But let's get our guy Taysom here. And I can't believe I'm saying our guy. I've been bullied into becoming a Taysom guy. There you go. The chat goes wild.
I mean, Taysom is a pretty great pick.
Marcos, am I crazy for thinking Skyy Moore over Rashee Rice? No, and the market agrees. There's almost a 15 pick ADP difference between those guys. Skyy getting pumped up at training camp. I don't think that's crazy at all.
Yeah, I think Moore's gonna move up. He was my pick on ADP chasing for closing line value. I think he'll continue rising a bit, at least because we discussed there's no one in that. We need some wide receivers to be like 9th round values. Like we desperately need some 9th round value wide receivers.
Yeah.
And Skyy Moore, I think, is a pretty strong candidate to feel like a 9th round value if he's the Chiefs starting slot receiver, which it's trending that way.
Yep.
I mean, at that point, maybe he moves up from there.
Yeah. I actually want to just real quick, not to take a more sober note, but Davis lost one of his dogs, had to put her down, I think after a battle with cancer. He posted about it on Twitter. But if you guys see Davis on Twitter and Discord, shoot him a message. Let him know you guys are thinking about him today.
I didn't realize that. Sorry.
Yeah. She was the big Saint Bernard. Just a beautiful, beautiful beast. So definitely thinking about Davis today. Know how hard that is.
Sure.
So I kind of like DPJ or Curtis Samuel at this spot of the board. Is there anything else jumping out to you?
Nope. I'm totally fine with either of those guys.
Yeah. ADP is DPJ. I kind of prefer in a vacuum. Samuel, will you break the
I'm
tie
good with
for me
Samuel.
here? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I've taken Samuel yet. So
yeah. I did also just notice if we're doing our gal brain, I know my guy Clay's in the chat here. Curtis Samuel plays against the Jets in week 16.
Oh,
so there you go. Beautiful. There you go, Clay. That one's for you.
I also, I'm not into Howell, and I listened back to the one of the episodes. Shawn, he was just going on about Howell and what a great pick he is. But like my thing is, I can have my cake and eat it too. If Sam Howell is a fun quarterback who gets benched, then I want the wide receivers. This could be why do I need to make sure Sam Howell's starting all season? He'd be fun. He can take sacks at an insane rate like he did in college, but still get the ball downfield, throw some interceptions, but still support some wide receivers. I'm into the Commanders wide receivers. Just don't have the confidence that I can pick a quarterback who starts all year.
Yeah, and you're not on an island with that thought either. There are definitely 2 camps. There's the Sam Howell go Burr camp, and then there's the, let's just face it, at some point this season, Jacoby Brissett is going to get some starts. Levitan had that take on a recent ETR pod. They were talking about Sam Howell and stuff, and Adam was just like, I just know Brissett's going to have a few starts this year. The whole question is like, when do those starts come? And that's where it gets really fun. The same thing happens with the Cardinals, right? And the whole Kyler Murray thing. It's just like, if he plays, when is he going to be playing? Will it be the time that matters? Because my guess, Pat, is you would change your tune. If I said, I know for a fact Sam Howell is going to start week 10 through week 17, you'd say, sign me up. but
Yes, I would.
it's the doubt of not knowing when those starts are going to come.
I
If
would
he
be
yeah.
I would be maybe if Brissett was sort of, if the situation was different, maybe Howell had more draft capital behind him, same exact profile. He was a rookie, and Brissett had been brought in to be the starter. I would be more interested in Howell in the 18th round. Like if this is an Andy Dalton Fields situation from his rookie year, which like that didn't even like work out for fantasy purposes, but like that type of situation I think is a little more appealing because at least you're like playing to get the starts by the end of the year. I do understand that the ceiling is higher with this situation because if Howell just holds down the job, he can be a smash. But the odds of him doing it, I think, are lower than high draft pick behind the guy who's going to get tried out early and not let that guy fail.
Yep. So we have 3 more picks left. We're about to pick here at the end of the 16th round. Our team so far: Joe Burrow, Derek Carr; running backs, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, James Cook, Eli Mitchell; wide receiver, Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, Jahan Dotson, Quentin Johnston, Allen Lazard, Rashee Rice, Curtis Samuel; tight end, David Njoku, Taysom Hill. Very balanced positionally here. I assume at the very least we're adding 1 more running back and 1 more wide receiver. And then I think that last one is probably up for debate.
Yep.
What do you
I
like
don't really
on
see anything here.
the board here? I mean, Jalen Hyatt sliding 20 picks past ADP, although 0 correlation or anything
Can
there.
you take the quarterbacks off? I
Yeah.
feel like they're blocking us. Good God.
Yeah, wide receiver is just completely wiped, which is usual. Jalen Hyatt.
I tell you what, Josh Downs is not a bad selection with the room we have. Give us a little, like we have the Lazard and the Samuels, like give us a little more late season upside.
The only other thing I'll say is, do you have any love for Chase Brown specifically because we have
really.
Burrow?
Not really.
Okay, so you want to go Downs here?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll take Josh Downs. I would say here, probably be looking at a running back. It's pretty wiped. I have been starting. I'm still not opposed to Brown if he comes back. I've been starting to boost up my Pierre Strong exposure here. Dwayne McBride we wouldn't do Izzy on a Breece team, but yeah, I mean we're wiped at running back.
Yeah, this feels like
we could also double up on Chiefs wide receivers, really playing that Bengals game as a shootout. Either Richie James or Justin Ross, I think would make sense too. And then we could punt the last running back until the 18th if you wanted to get to 9 wide receivers on this build.
I don't mind the thought, but I don't like those guys in the 17th. What other running backs? There's just no running backs.
Why does it matter that it's 7? I mean, like this is all so negligible.
Well, because I just feel like yeah, I see what you're saying.
Well, I personally, I would prefer to take Chase Brown and then figure out
Chase
a flyer.
Brown.
Yeah. I mean, he does fall here a little bit, and I perfectly acknowledge that it could just as easily be Travion Williams and Chase Brown could be a 0. But if we're hunting for any reason to take a running back in this range, which we want to probably get to 5, I mean, he's the best case I can make.
I also think this team can survive if he's a 0. Like it's not like a true kind of hyper fragile team, but like,
yeah,
if Cook is a hit, then we just need like one of the last 2 picks, Mitchell or Brown, to kind of do something. And Mitchell, I think, is an awesome pick. So if you're gonna just like try to hit a home run with a correlated backup, I think we're in the exact spot to do it.
This is why I love the end of drafts, because you could have literally 19 different opinions. Someone wanted us to take Purdy or Howell, Puka. Someone wanted to take Travion instead of him. Someone wanted to take CPAT, Zamir for the correlation, Kyron Williams. It's almost like you could do whatever you want at the end of the draft. I obviously want to break ties in favor of correlation there. And the fact that we missed out on Boyd, missed out on Irv, I don't mind getting a third Bengal on a Burrow Chase team.
Me either. Yeah. some people are. Bobby Trees came up. I will say I take a lot of Robert Woods right now, but mostly because I sometimes feel like I need the veteran guy to just like help me, like just fill out my wide receiver room if I'm a little rookie heavy. And in this room, I know we took Quentin Johnston and who was our other rookie? We took one other rookie too.
Well, Rashi.
Yeah. But we have Lazard and we have Samuel. Like those are two like veteran, kind of more boring dudes. So adding Woods to that room, I don't know.
Would you want to consider a third quarterback on this build?
Well, the room is sort of saying we don't really think quarterbacks matter. So, if you can get 18th round, I mean, Bryce Young is still here, which we don't have any reason to take him specifically, but
I think I would do Sam Howell over Bryce Young just based on, we've taken 2 Commanders wide receivers.
Well, I would take Purdy over Howell.
And Purdy, I think, would be viable too. The other option is, do we think this team needs to get to 9 wide receivers?
I don't think it has to.
Chase, Olave, Dotson, Quentin Johnson.
Do we think we can advance with these 2 quarterbacks? I think is the question, because Burrow is going to be our wins us 1 out of 16, 1 out of 16, 1 out of 441. Like that's most likely going to be Burrow. So can we get there with these 2?
I think we can. The problem is I just don't see anything else really jumping out to me otherwise. Chat knows I love the Justin Ross flyer. Otherwise, I'd be fine with Howell.
You want to take Howell? Go ahead. Yeah, take your guy.
You can sell me on Brock over Howell. We
don't have any pass catchers with Brock, so the more natural bring back is Howell. But you need him to be starting. Do you see this, chat?
I didn't force it. Pat Kerrane, on his own volition, just selected Sam Howell. I had nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. Come on down, Sam Howell.
That's gross.
Even though I've been trying to boost my Purdy exposure, why couldn't we have had Brandon Ayuk on this team, and then it would have been an easy decision. There you go.
If we had Brandon Ayuk, I would have been happy to take Purdy.
Yep. All right, the team is in the books. 3-5-8-2. This was a fun draft. Quarterbacks: Joe Burrow, Derek Carr, Sam Howell. Running back: Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, James Cook, Eli Mitchell, Chase Brown. Wide receivers: Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, Jahan Dotson, Quentin Johnson, Allen Lazard, Rashee Rice, Curtis Samuel, Josh Downs. Tight end: David Njoku and Taysom Hill. I think some of the big decision points were obviously get the ETN value or grab another wide receiver there instead. Passing on reaching for Tyler Boyd to get that double with Burrow and taking Njoku instead. Otherwise, I felt like this draft was pretty straightforward, and it does go to show you when you take those multiple detours, like you are going to have to like plug your nose a lot of times and take a Lazard type pick in those rooms. Anything else stand out to you from this draft?
No, I think that sums it up. The Watson one, then we wouldn't have had to take Howell at the end. So I obviously regret not taking Watson there. But yeah, I think anytime you take a running back in these rooms, you're sacrificing flexibility. But, flexibility isn't going to win you anything. You need to, at some point, you're going to need to lock in your picks. So you want to figure out the right time to sort of sacrifice that flexibility and making sure you're getting the best deal for selling your flexibility away. I think we did a pretty good job of that. I think the room could have been a little kinder to us and, let Treylon Burks fall to us, and let us get Dotson on the wrap. Like then we're very happy. But it's just tough. It's like, do I go back and take Mike Williams over Etienne? I don't think so. But I would also say it didn't quite work out the way I wanted. But I think the bet was a good bet to make. So,
yeah. And I'm trying to see here, looking at the rest of this. Feel very good about our running back room. It It is interesting too. A lot of times, like when you're getting buried by the Avalanche, you don't have the two alphas up top. Like normally it's like you took Justin Jefferson, it got wiped out. So you took two running backs or whatever there. Like having the Chase and Olave, I think softens that a little bit, and probably a good point of why we didn't necessarily need to get to 9 wide receivers in this room.
Right. Yeah. And Dotson and Quentin Johnston and then Lazard, like that's obviously not the best 5 wide receivers I've ever seen, but
no,
I think it's an acceptable first 5 wide receivers. You certainly need to get to 8 there.
Yeah. The only other, looking at this from all the different angles, I think we did a good job getting a lot of those mini correlations in there, building around that Jets Browns, building around San Francisco and Washington. We didn't get any bringbacks for our New Orleans game here. No Tampa Bay. Mike Evans almost fell to us. That I'm trying to remember where he went. Yeah, he went at pick 69 and we picked at 70. So if he goes Dotson there, we're probably grabbing Evans, and that probably changes the entire trajectory though of this team. So who knows? But the thing with the Bucks, right, is like there aren't really a lot of stacking options unless we wanted to do what Cade Otton at the end of the draft, and even he went, it looks like. Did Cade Otton go? Yeah, Cade Otton went. So I don't know there. How do you think about that? Obviously we didn't go out of our way to force a Tampa Bay bring back. I think it's a little tricky, right? When you're building out that second stack late in the way we did with Carr, are you ever trying to force a bring back on that main correlation of yours?
A Cade Otton would, especially if I needed the tight end, if I didn't have Taysom or whatever, and I wanted to go, or there was just like nothing available and all the value is kind of at the last round pick tight end. I certainly would be open to I take Cade Otton, right? So bringing back Cade Otton is totally fine to me. I guess like if it's your second quarterback and kind of a more low upside pocket passer like Derek Carr, who's really he's along, like Carr is along for the ride with Olave, right? Not the other way around. Like Olave is propelling Carr. So it's really about getting Carr to hit your lineup a few times throughout the season when Olave's having his huge games that are really helping you. And then most likely you're going to probably need Burrow in the final, that not Carr. So I'm a little bit less inclined in that situation to really force the bring back, especially because I think we did a pretty good job of building in some additional correlation. We've got Lazard and Breece Hall with David Njoku. So we bet on another game already. So there are some, like, how does this team vault to the top? Well, it vaults to the top with a huge Chase game. Burrow comes along. Chase Brown is not nothing. And then we get this other game, which isn't actually the Saints game where our second quarterback is. We get the Jets and the Browns game to go off. So if we had no other additional correlation, and of course we also have the Commanders and the 49ers. So we have that game too. So given that, I don't really care that we don't have a Buccaneers bring back. We've bet on 3 specific games. Only one of them we have the quarterback.
Yeah. In the way, again, and start to sound like a broken record, but that correlation is a boost. And if you're, grabbing some super fringe, who's even like the third wide receiver on the Bucs these days? Is Scotty Miller? Like if you're Russell Gage, if you're grabbing him, just for the correlation thing, and you're passing over other players who are better players, then you're starting to get into a little bit dicey territory as far as forcing the correlations. If you guys want more of Pat and I drafting, I believe Pat and I are going to be doing a 2-man game tonight on ship chasing. Ben Gretsch is out tonight. Pat and I are going to hop into a Dalmatian draft. So if you guys want to come and steal all our wide receivers, you're going to have to pony up $101 tonight instead of just 25.
And use one of your 3-man. I mean, is this the way you want to spend your Dalmatian? I don't know.
Yeah, I love how we're at the point now we're trying to convince people not to want to draft at us. What are your 3 Dalmatians? $101 in this economy. That's kind of steep. You
know what we're actually going to do? There's going to be people who are like, I don't know if I'm going to do, like, maybe I'll do 1 Dalmatian. They're like, oh, I'm definitely doing 2 now because I'm going to
Exactly. Exactly. Anything else, Pat, going on over at Leg Up this week?
We got, the DraftKings rankings, the underdog rankings for you. We've got another Dynasty episode of the Leg Up podcast will be out this week on running backs with Davis Maddock and Jacob Sanderson. Look for that. That's completely free, freely available podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I am working on a couple articles that should be out either by the end of this week or early next as well.
Awesome. Be sure to check out Legendary Upside. Like I always say, even if you aren't ponying up for the premium stuff, make sure you just get on Pat's email list. He does sprinkle in some really good posts there.
Yeah, I had a free one recently as well. So
there you go.
Yeah.
So check out Legendary Upside. Also, Pat's YouTube channel, too. I know a lot of you guys have been listening to the audio versions. Pat has his YouTube channel going on over there. I got that linked down below. Make sure you're subscribed over there. And, of course, to Ship Chasing, where Pat and I will be live tonight at 9:15 p.m. Eastern to hop in a Dalmatian draft. Pat, great time as always. I'll catch you later tonight.
See you later.
All right. And with Pat heading out, it is now time for my draft with Shawn Siegele. Let's do a little behind the scenes and get situated here. Shawn Siegele, welcome back to the show. It is, of course, the Best Ball Banana Stand, a weekly show hosted by me, Peter Overzet, and my guest, Shawn Siegele from Rotoviz. Whether you're listening to this on the Rotoviz airwaves or on my YouTube channel, welcome. We draft a team every week here in Best Ball Mania 4, chasing that $3 million prize. Shawn, I did just hop into a draft here to get us rolling. How are you doing today?
Good. I had a chance to jump in with you and Ben after dark the other night for a minute, and that was always interesting. I couldn't hear you, so if you had any awesome notes on the zoos, if we need to fill time at any point, I've got zoo information for you.
Yes, it took me a second to realize what you were referencing and that I had completely forgot that, yes, Gretch and I may or may not have drunk dialed Shawn last Thursday, and we did learn quite a sad anecdote about the Kansas City Zoo from the mid-90s. So I'm not going to spoil any more of that, Shawn. They are going to have to go watch that randomizer draft with Ben Gretch to get that. But yes, we are going to be a little bit more focused, a little bit more centered today here on Best Ball Banana Stand. Shawn, we are picking from the 1-6 here in Best Ball Mania. I do have your freshly updated ranks here from Rotoviz loaded in, and we are off to the races here. Have you gotten a few drafts under your belt since we last talked?
I have, and I did one last night that was interesting because I was exploring some builds that the Roster Construction Explorer definitely doesn't like. So working through what happens if 2023 actually doesn't resemble 2022 very closely at all, which I think is an interesting experiment that we all need to work with. Pete, I wanted to ask you, as we get in a position here where we might take a running back, do you think the wide receiver heavy nature obviously is the result of drafters understanding the format and the importance of the receivers? We're here at 6. McCaffrey, I think, would have been interesting.
Yeah.
With him gone, I'm willing to reach down on a wide receiver. Is that the case with you as well?
Yeah, Nora, I will say, suspiciously a lack of badges in this draft. I did tip people off in the Discord that we're hopping in. So maybe we have a little more flexibility here. AJ Brown, anything else that you would want to do here?
I think Ceedee Lamb is pretty interesting too, if you prefer that.
Oh, sorry, I didn't get it in time. I do think that's a fun.
No, that's good.
A fun conversation though. And you had hinted at it on a previous show. I heard you and Gretch talking about it a little bit. And I think I asked Gretch about it on Ship Chasing too last night, of like, we all love AJ Brown and Diggs, but they are a slightly weaker profile than some of the wide receivers you used to be able to get in that range. Talk to me about Ceedee Lamb. And I actually think he's interesting when being discussed with Davante Adams too, right? Like a player we have really zero concerns with from a talent profile. But you just mentioning Ceedee over Davante, how are you thinking about those guys relative to, say, the Brown Diggs tier?
Well, I think that we could get a huge explosion from him. The more you look into his profile, I mean, we would have liked to see him take more routes early, really jump into that 13, 14, 1500 yard range even earlier in his career. But when you go back through the entire profile, stretching back to college, where I think he was even better than people realize, and somebody who could have been a top 6 or 7 draft pick. And I mean, this could be the year that he takes another step, kind of moves into what we saw from a Cooper Kupp. Now, that's balanced a little bit by having Brandon Cooks there, who could steal a lot more of the targets than some of the people he's been dealing with in the past.
Yep. We do see Ceedee Lamb go off the board at 9 ahead of Stephon Diggs. There's some element here, Shawn, where it feels like leading the witness, leading the draft board here. You mentioned Ceedee Lamb ahead of Diggs. And then, for the only draft I've done all summer, you see Ceedee Lamb go ahead of Stephon Diggs. Funny how that happens, an impressionable draft room. We're about to be on the clock here at 2-7, pick 19, best available according to the Rotoviz ranks here. We got Jonathan Taylor, Tony Pollard, Jalen Hurts, if you wanted to stack him up. Mahomes does go off the board, so all of those guys are available. You could also dig deeper at wide receiver with Higgins and Devonta. How do you want to play this here from the middle of the draft board?
Well, I think that Jonathan Taylor is a massive win at these prices. I do think it's also interesting to take Devontae Smith, see if that pushed Hurts to us, kind of depending on how you think this draft is going to go, how your drafts are going. Those would be the two options for me.
Let's so in the last draft, the AJ Brown drafter did exactly what we did, took Devonta Smith here, and then did get Jalen Hurts coming back. Now, I think it's a little easier to do if you reach for AJ Brown just slightly higher, just knowing there's a little less risk that Hurts, but we are seeing the quarterbacks falling. But as I say that right there, Jalen Hurts gets snapped, picked up right after us. So that dream is dead. But I will say, at least in my Best Ball Mania drafts, I mean, Jalen Hurts is falling to pick 28, 29, pick 30, 50, 60% of the time. So I don't think it's an awful bet. How do you think about this team now where we don't get Jalen Hurts? And apologies if you would have preferred Jonathan Taylor, knowing Hurts might not make it back. But I assume you're still fine with a big bet on the Eagles alphas here.
I like it. I think that, both of those picks are mild reaches, but there are so many ways that it can work out. And it does let us defend against the receiver runs a little bit. One of the things that we are seeing in this draft is that it may not be nearly as receiver heavy as the earlier ones that we've done together this season. So that might not be as much of an issue. I was kind of looking forward to taking an elite QB because I've been very late on the quarterbacks, but I don't think it's a problem at all. I think that late QB is actually the way you have to play it in the early going to get the most value out of these boards that are running back and wide receiver. Just it dictates those positions to such an extreme with the way ADP is working this year.
Yeah, and it looked, I don't think this person would take Josh Allen. They do take Ramondre. I've been doing some Josh Allen backdoor stacks. I know there's a late wide receiver on the Bills you recently wrote up. Would you want to go that route here, or would you want to grab another receiver? Gibbs has been falling more, so that would seem like a reach. What do you think is the play here?
I like either Samuel, or we could do the Allen play. I think we're going to get some opportunities for even later Allen, to where it might work out even a little bit better. I'd hate to be a little bit ahead in terms of reaching on a couple of receivers and then also having an elite QB. It starts to put together a roster that maybe doesn't have enough overall value to it.
Yeah, so we do select Deebo Samuel here. Anytime Shawn gives me even the slightest of permissions to start setting up a 0RB build, I am going to slam on the gas there. As much as I do like some of those builds with the Josh Allen backdoor stuff. So we get AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Deebo Samuel here to start. And yeah, we did see, quite the run there. Breece Hall, Josh Jacobs go at the 2-3 turn, which is where I think I would have assumed they would go in more drafts. Although I've had best ball breakfast drafts where those guys have fallen to the 3-4 turn. So does seem to be a little bit more running back heavy room here. Shawn, any other builds or trends in this draft jumping out to you?
No, I think that those running backs going is going to give us actually the opportunity to go zero RB, and still we can make detours when we want, but go zero RB and get the full value out of it, as opposed to trying to push it. I mean, there are two different sides when you're in the wide receiver avalanche. You get the receivers, you don't get locked out, and then you take running back values later. Some of those guys who really fall, some of the names that you and I like specifically, we've gotten at fantastic values in these drafts. We may have to look to grab one of those names a little bit earlier, but in a more normal draft like this, it's going to allow us to shift our thinking back a little bit and give us a lot more opportunities to do things that we might do in normal drafts, do things that fit more directly off of ADP. So I think that's going to be an interesting exercise as we go forward.
For sure. Yeah. And Pat and I ran into that dynamic in our first draft where we did take Breece Hall in the third, and then we got Joe Burrow to stack up with Jamar Chase. And then all of a sudden, Travis Etienne sitting there for us at pick 50, falls 10 picks past ADP. And we just couldn't resist that. But then, we were really behind at wide receiver from essentially making 3 detours early on. And so in us passing on Josh Allen, we still leave ourselves open to a really big faller if we want. And I do kind of like having that flexibility. And Pat and I were talking about that too, of like, once you close the door on those detours, then you really can be in rough shape here. Whereas with this 3 wide receiver start, we're going to be able to make a lot of good selections going forward here. We are about to pick at 4-7, pick 43. Jerry Jeudy, your guy, comes off the board, but we still have some wide receivers we like here, unless you would want to take a plunge with, say, a Fields or a Kenneth Walker. You can see here I'm very high on Chris Godwin. With you, is he the selection at this pick?
Do you think there's reason or room to risk having him come back through? It would be interesting to take Drake London here, but probably not necessary. I mean, I am quite a bit higher on Godwin for what he's likely to do, but I'm also going to have a lot more of him.
Yeah, we could see. I mean, if we think some of these other options we like here, we do have a little cover. Let's do Drake London, because he's an interesting one to talk through, because I know he's one of those guys where you like the profile, you like this guy. It's just the price is a little baffling. Is this one of those spots where you're like, hey, I think it's too rich, but I don't want to have the tournaments lock and have 0% Drake London?
It's a lot that, and you look at his peripherals, you look at his weighted targets per route, especially if Kyle Pitts is not 100% healthy, which, I mean, I think he's going to be, but you could see London with a massive target share, which you're going to need to have in an offense that probably will not have a ton of total passes. But one of the things that Ben wrote about on Stealing Signals, it was really cool, we did a Stealing Bananas episode on it, was how in some of these offenses where you're going to have some of the option plays, the target volume does end up very concentrated on the top guys. Well, if you believe that Drake London is a star and you believe that the volume is going to be concentrated, that balances out some of the risk of the total play volume. And I think it gives us an interesting play there with an emerging second-year player to do some other things late, which is going to be an issue with the Eagles situation there.
We are on the clock here in the 5th. Some of our favorites going off the board. JSN, we do see a lot of tight ends and running backs available here. Wide receivers, if we wanted to go dip into the Burks, Pickens, Evans, what jumps out to you here?
Let's take Hawkinson.
Okay. I like it. Yeah. And when you are doing a 0 RB build, it seems like we passed on the elite QB, but I tend to like my 0 RB builds when they have at least one of the elite tight end or elite quarterback. Hawkinson slips a few picks past ADP. We also have been adding in 3 players that give us later quarterback stacking options. Talk to me about Hawk here, who does seem to be sliding a bit more closer to, say, the Kittle and Pitts prices than he is surging up towards, say, Mark Andrews.
Right. So we have Hawkinson there with a potentially massive target volume. And when you look at what works in the postseason, is traditionally taken the elite tight end. Now, you and I have talked a lot. I like Leighton 3 at the tight end position this year a lot. There are some better options there than usual. And because you need to be so wide receiver running back heavy early, I think that you can wait at that spot. But Hawkinson gives us that trump card now in this 0 RB build. I've been working on an article for the site column. Kelly and I are going to have an episode on OT talking about reverse drafting. And there are some great sections of the draft once we get into round 9 and on for taking a lot of these 0 RB picks at running back. I think even in this draft where the running backs are going, we're going to have shots at those players later.
Yep. And I think we've talked about this before, but I want to say for you, even when you take a guy like Hawkinson or Kittle, Pitts, Goddard, whoever, you're still open to 3 tight end builds with those guys if it makes sense at the end of the draft where that last player is or best available player is a tight end.
I am, especially this season, because I think that we want to limit the number of throwaway picks. And I think that the late tight ends, they look good. The other thing that it does is it gives you another out in the postseason where the tight ends, once we get all said and done, are going to be bad again. They're not going to score many points. But if you have an upside play late and you have a player who really differentiates you from the rest of that group in the finals who could score big, like a Noah Fant has done, like a Trey McBride has done, I really like having that play in there at a position where people generally just aren't getting many points.
Yep. We do see some wide receivers now starting to go here a little bit ahead of ADP. Traylon Burks comes off the board at 64. Our team through 5 rounds here, we got a 0 RB build going. Shawn, is this the first kind of true 0 RB where we haven't taken a running back through 5 rounds in our stream drafts? I think it is.
It is. And I was excited to potentially do that today. It's fun that the draft is setting up for that. There are a couple names here that I would really like to get added in. So we'll see what we have here at the next spot. Pete, you and I reached for a receiver in the previous draft. I don't know that it ended up being the play in that one, but I do think it's the play in this one. What do you think about Dotson?
Ooh, okay. I thought you were going to say Pickens. I see where you're going, though, here. I assume this is influenced by the Debo selection, influenced by us still wanting to add quarterback options late, although Pickens checks that box too. But to me, I'm guessing you're looking ahead to the schedule here with this selection.
I am, and there are so many drafts to still do. I don't want to get too concerned about exposures early, but I mean, the Steelers are saying they're going to run. I think that their weapons are in the passing game. I think that if Kenny Pickett takes a step forward, it's going to be a beautiful passing attack. And partly what they're doing right now is taking a little bit of the pressure off of him. But if they do go extremely run heavy, if their defense is successful, if they are a little bit of a throwback team, I'm looking at my exposures. It's very Steelers heavy. In drafts where it makes some sense to pivot off of that, I'm going to let those Steelers guys fall.
Getting some nice tight end fallers in this room. Don't often see Dallas Goedert going ahead of George Kittle. George Kittle slips to pick 70. Kyle Pitts still on the board here at pick 74, although that's not too far past his ADP. Was it hard for you to pass on J.K. Dobbins there? Because I know he's a guy you like, and he does slide, like a good 15 picks past ADP.
It is, and that's the other one I think that we definitely could have considered. But since the room is giving us the good names, I do want to get to that 6 or 7 wide receiver early and then be in a position where you don't have to worry about it the rest of the draft. Or we're so loaded that, I mean, obviously we're set. And there are a couple of other names. I do like Dobbins. I think I'm going to end up with a ton of him. But even recently, they've been suggesting that they may throw the ball to the running backs a little bit more. If Dobbins catches some passes, he's going to be a massive league winner from this area of the draft.
So we are on the clock. Pickens and Swift go. I assume those would have been 2 names we would have been interested in. Wide receivers. You got the Ravens guys, Elijah Moore. Pitts still on the board here. What do you like?
Well, we could do something that we haven't talked about a lot and going Cam Akers. Is that a direction that
Yeah, talk to me about Akers. He had got him and Dameon Pierce. You can see here based on my exposures, only 6.7% Akers. I don't often find myself taking running backs in this range just because I'm grabbing a Pickens who falls there. I think on this build as an anchor, the Akers stuff is interesting, right? Because he does project now as a volume workhorse. The Rams are talking him up. And then you also juxtapose it with some of those rumblings at the beginning of the year last year, where the team was saying we're down on him. They wanted to get Kerrane Williams involved. Then Kerrane gets hurt. We kind of never know how that would have played out. Are you buying that Akers is back in the good graces of this coaching staff?
It seems like it. They haven't done much at all to deal with that position. Now, they have weaknesses all across the offense, and I mean, that could be an issue for them. Anytime I would write in-season articles talking about how you wanted to address your starting lineups, how you wanted to maybe play a little bit DFS element, talk about some of the late or in-season, I should say, underdog drafts. You pull up the advanced team stat explorer, and the run blocking for the Rams was so excruciatingly poor that you didn't want any part of that. But I think that this Rams offense is going to bounce back. I don't think it's going to be what it was in 2021, but I think there is a little margin left there. Akers is going to have a lot of work, and unlike some other backs like a James Conner and a Rachaad White who are in similar situations, you have a guy who probably is still a big talent. He's now far enough removed from the injury that we might see that. And I just think those offenses will be a little bit better. The Tampa Bay offense should be good, but I guess I am selling White's talent profile, at least at this point, maybe a little bit later in draft season when we need a name there. I'll feel like it makes more sense to pull the trigger on him.
Yeah, happy to get some exposure in there. I assume, though, you would have been Swift over Akers if Swift fell.
Man, I really wanted Swift. Those last two picks right before ours were daggers.
Yep. All right, we are about to be on the clock here. You know, we're in that range where the wide receivers are all flying off the board, and in kind of a purgatory here. Zay Flowers does go at 88. A guy we've been drafting a ton, James Cook here at the top. You know, Javonte Williams, another guy we like. What stands out to you on this board?
Yeah, I think we could go back to Cook. I think that we could go with Javonte a little early. I've been trying to get as much of both him and Kerrane. I mean, I think that Kerrane is probably the way to play it overall, and it's going to be a massive winner. And yet I think that Williams, when it makes sense, we want to get a little bit of him in there. And when you have Cam Akers and you have Javonte Williams, and you're taking them in rounds 7 and 8, with the profiles that they came in with the age that they are, if they can be healthy and you look to the second half of the tournament, I think that we're going to be able to draft some really nice running back values in the sort of intermediate rounds. I'm not worried about the overall scoring there. I like where we're going to be at wide receiver. And so I'm kind of thinking to the tournament element of it, where I just have a hard time imagining players in this range scoring with Javonte Williams. It's not out of the question that we talk about 2024 ADP. And Pete, this was something you brought up on the show last week, that Javonte Williams is a 1-2 turn guy. When you can get him here, I think you have to take at least some shares.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's interesting with Javonte is if say he was fully healthy, but he was going to be suspended for half the season even, right? Like those 8 games, but then you knew he came back at completely full strength, no injury history. He's still probably like a 5th round pick. Like just knowing where like I'm going to bank on this healthy guy just for that back half of the season. I think people are spooked, and even myself in my heart of hearts sometimes get spooked of being like, are you going to get a watered down version of Javonte Williams where sure he's out there, but he's not that explosive, you know, pass catching, you know, behemoth that we saw him be in spurts.
And Russell Wilson could really destroy everything that they're trying to do
True.
there. So we always want to keep that in mind.
Yes, that is always in play here. So we're about to be on the clock here at pick 102, our 9th round pick, our team, no quarterbacks, Cam Akers, Javonte at running back, wide receivers, AJ Brown. Let's go back to the board here because we are on the clock. Daniel Jones is kind of interesting if you want to set up a backdoor thing, week 17 with Akers. We also have a lot of running backs here at the top of the board. What jumps out to you?
Do you want to do a Jameson Williams on a team where we have a lot of early receivers and we can kind of wait for him and then have the tournament element, or take another running back?
Now I'm intrigued because every time I've heard you talk about Jameson Williams, it has been in the most unflattering light possible, to where I almost got a whiff of you didn't even think this guy was remotely draftable. So if you float his name, I'm going to select him and let you talk about this.
Well, I like him on these teams that are loaded up and might not need him for the early going. I mean, Romeo Doubs, a player we took last week, he was somebody that, I mean, I was kind of hoping we could get to go with TJ Hawkinson there and get a little bit of the correlation play. One of the issues that I had after we took the 2 Eagles early and didn't get Jalen Hurts is that I'm souring some on these Arizona Cardinals options, which makes that portion of it a little bit more difficult. But with Dobbs not an option to come back to us in round 10, which is probably where we would have considered him in this draft, then I like going with Williams. They've been talking him back up. He's a guy who, probably is discount version of Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, when we're thinking about what the production could be like, but even a bigger vertical threat. Obviously, you're not going to be able to account for him when you're trying to deal with Amon-Ra St. Brown. They've got the interesting tight end in LaPorta. I can just see him racing by the defense for a lot of those long touchdowns that he put up at Alabama. He was there a couple times last year, and Jared Goff missed him. And so even though he didn't play a lot and he didn't play well, you could see the upside for him. You were just mentioning with Javonte Williams that, if the player is just suspended, that we might want to take him in this range. Now, we've added a decent amount of risk into this team, but because we've waited on quarterback and because we have all of that receiver firepower early, I like to take some of these risks. It'll probably force us to be a little bit more conservative, at least for a few of our selections here.
Yeah, so we're at a 2-6-1 build. No quarterbacks yet, but tons of quarterback options based on this team. And I actually think this board is going to break for us fairly nicely. Looking at our ranks, we have a ton of running back options coming up here, as well as quarterback stacking partners. So this should line up kind of value-wise there. And I do agree. I haven't been taking a lot of Jameson Williams, but in kind of when you're loaded up at wide receiver, as how does your sixth wide receiver get into your lineup when you start, with a 0 RB team? Like, you want a profile that can truly break out and surge. And I do think Jameson Williams is probably one of the few guys who can do that. We're about to be on the clock at 1:15. We see Perine falling. Would you ever do a combo Perine Javonte Williams, or do you find their production to be kind of mutually exclusive?
I don't think so. I like putting them together. He does go right there, but the Kamara Ingram production, I think that even once Williams gets healthy, you're gonna have a little bit of that. Again, that pushes back against Williams, but I think that you can put them together. I wish that we had that chance. Who are you liking here as our best choices?
We could load up on Eagles with Penny, play Brian Robinson if we're building out more with Washington. Who do you like?
Let's go with Penny.
Okay. Yeah. And A-Chain sitting here at the top of the ranks, he's been a guy I've just noticed falling a little bit more. So I don't mind pushing him and seeing if he were to happen to come back. I think it is interesting to talk about, you mentioned kind of souring on the Cardinals, missing out on Hurts, honestly, from that angle makes you feel better in that, you could totally see, and we've seen it last year, where you get the Devonta Smith alpha game in week 16, you get the AJ Brown alpha game there, and then maybe you top it off with a Rashad Penny game in week 17, where you could ping pong through the alpha games with those Eagles. But is the Cardinals' concerns actually making you want to limit your overall Eagles exposure? Or is that just more exclusively on the Cardinals angle?
Yeah, when they're talking about their third round receiver who didn't do much in college as being a big part of that team, it starts to worry you in terms of what the overall talent level is. I think that there could be some huge quarterback issues in terms of what they decide to do there before Kyler Murray is back. They could go to a pure tank season and really let him wait. We witnessed last year what happened when Deshaun Watson came back very late in the year and did more or less ruin the rapport that the offense had with the previous QB, and just the lack of continuity with all of that. So that doesn't mean that those guys aren't draftable, but I'm moving them down a little bit at the same time that they appear to be a little bit trendy. That makes it more difficult to put that portion of it together, although we still do have a late guy like Rondale Moore in 11. It starts to become a little bit trickier for me, even though as a talent, I think that Rondale Moore is still going to do some things at the NFL level that surprise people. So when we look at it from that perspective, it becomes a more difficult build. We selected Penny there, and I'm very high on Jalen Hurts. I think that he should be the first quarterback going. And yet, if we want to tell ourselves a story about what we've drafted here, the team that they're building is so dynamic, and the risk if Hurts is injured is so significant that, they may pull back on that a little bit. We could see the playoff path run through the three Eagles that we've drafted.
We're on the clock here. We got a couple running backs we like: Khalil Herbert, Eli Mitchell. We could get our first quarterback stack with Jared Goff. Anything else jumping out to you?
Well, I don't have any Kincaid, and there is an interesting late build that you can do with him if you want to take quarterback, I'm good with that too.
The only thing I'll say about Kincaid, again, is he has been a guy who's just routinely falling in drafts, where I do really feel cheaper Kincaid coming. There's just enough of us out there saying he's overpriced. And, I'm sure because we were talking about him now, he won't fall to us. But he is a guy who routinely is now going at 140. And I do think we're going to start to see him be more of a, 12th, 13th round pick going forward. So that's my only thing of I think we're going to have better prices on Kincaid throughout the summer.
I agree with that. The tricky part in terms of what we have done here is that we are seeing some of those fun running back names go. I was hoping that Etienne would come back around to us. He's someone I know you're very high on, and I don't think that he is hurt as badly by a Dalvin Cook signing. I was going to hurt him. But if we're thinking about different possibilities, and with Cook and Hopkins being guys who could really hit either wide receiver groups or running back groups, I think it's the later Dolphins runners that I'm more concerned about. If you were to get that Etienne still with a ton of upside, but then Kerrane Miller, another back that we really like, goes early 11 instead of mid 12, which is probably where we would have considered him. So this is sort of the flip of what we've been dealing with in the other drafts, where we have to be aware of where those running backs are going to come off.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I have gotten complacent in just these running backs are always there. I've done Shawn. I've had a few moments recently in drafts when I've been doing my slow drafts or other fast ones, where I will go and Google Kerrane Miller and be like, did something happen? Did he have an injury flare up? And I know he is technically rehab, but when he falls in drafts, I'm like, this feels eerily suspicious, because I love this guy. It feels like a slam dunk pick. Why is he falling in drafts? But everything seems fine with Kerrane Miller as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I think I have some 13, 14 round exposure there. So, you missed him on a draft here. You can handle that. But building out our running back group, what do our running backs look like here?
Yeah, let me recap our team here. So we have we did get our first quarterback, Jared Goff. Our tight end is TJ Hawkinson. Our running backs, Cam Akers, Javonte Williams, Rashad Penny, just an absolute bastion of health in this running back room. Wide receiver, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Deebo Samuel, Drake London, Jahan Dotson, Jameson Williams. So we could definitely use some running backs. A guy we like, Khalil Herbert, was falling. He goes off the board at 136. Roschon Johnson comes off the board. There are some names here. I mean, Jamal Williams is a faller, not the typical Shawn Siegele back. There's Algier, Bigsby. What do you like?
Well, we can always take Williams off of our Miller exposure. We can get some Tank Bigsby in there. I'd be okay with reaching on Dulcich too.
Let's do Dulcich and just see what running back comes to us. Dulcich is a guy that I think we've now selected a couple of times here. I'm starting to get the feeling that you think he's a pretty big value at the tight end position.
I do, at least a player who has an extremely wide range of outcomes. I think if you are betting on talent and then a possibility that the workload or the target volume could emerge in such a way that you see that jump. I mean, we wanted to be early as opposed to late on TJ Hawkinson. And so you have a year there where he doesn't really help you, but he's not really hurting you. I think this could be the season where Dulcich does that. But if it all happens a year early, then you have a league winner out of the 12th. And again, coming up with tight end names that are not sort of placeholders, but actual guys who could contribute to you winning a tournament. There aren't that many of them. And the way that this draft is falling, we're going to have a lot of tight end firepower that'll help balance out the lesser QB firepower. And when you put that with the early wide receivers, it becomes one of these sort of branded zero RB-ish builds that is just so much fun.
Yeah, it is. And Jamal Williams does go off the board at 143. I'm with you in that I've not been selecting him much at all, but I kind of like the idea of, balancing your portfolio when you're super heavy on a guy with extremely cheap prices of the other guy. I have done a Kamara share, 25 picks past ADP. It does seem like a really good way to play that situation both ways. Tank Bigsby does go off the board at 146 to a room that's just absolutely cranking running backs. Mostert goes off the board. Algier is here at ADP. Is he the pick for you?
Why don't we why don't we wait one more there? I do like him. I think that if you don't have Bijan, what do you think about adding our third tight end and getting LaPorta there to go with Goff and
I love this
Jameson?
because I would, if I was by myself, like in my head, my internal monologue would be not opposed to a 3 tight end build, but a 3 tight end build where you spend the capital on these guys early, as opposed to how most people are doing the late 3 tight end build is, hey, 16, 17, 18, that's where I'll take them. LaPorta obviously makes sense because he's the last stacking partner with Jared Goff. I think I would have gotten tripped up on the capital spent on the 3rd tight end here, but talk to me about reaching on LaPorta there as our 3rd.
Well, I think we're going to be able to do some fun things late with the receivers and quarterbacks, but I did want to get us really heavy onto Detroit once we had Jared Goff. I think that, I mean, if Jared Goff is going to do what we need him to do to make sense as a pick here, then I think LaPorta has to come through, and they're just absolutely raving about him. When you look at those 3 tight ends, I think that it's not ideal, but I don't want to get kind of locked into, like you were saying, not making the move that works for this team if I think that the upside is there. And again, thinking it from a tournament perspective, once we're into 12, 13, we're not talking about big time names that we're passing on for Dulcich and LaPorta. So I still think that's okay, even though the great part about the latent 3 at tight end is that you can do it in 17 and 18, and that'll bail you out from other picks. But I think that we're probably going to get wide receiver options that are more interesting in the final round today than we do a lot of times.
That is true. Like you said, that's the push-pull, right? We're getting a little thinned out at our running back targets, but it probably means some of the late wide receiver options are still going to be available there. And I do too. And this is why I have such a blast drafting with Shawn, because I think a lot of people viewing this too, we get into the rhythms of like, hey, late round tight end, or this is where I execute these drafts, and being like, you can still get the structural principles of these builds, but if you do them in different pockets of the draft, there's probably, we probably drafted the only tight end team on Underdog that has, Hawkins and Dulcich and LaPorta on it. That maybe I'm wrong there with so many drafts, but it is definitely unique from that perspective. Couple running backs we do like here. What do you see?
Well, I like Spears and Hubbard quite a bit.
Yep.
Hubbard is way above ADP, but we might need to take that risk in this particular room. The 2 receivers we really like just went. I don't know that we need to take a QB here. And so the ADP value doesn't matter a ton to me in this particular situation.
Yeah, I broke the tie in favor of Chuba despite, reaching for him relative to the Spears ADP, because, when we do take on, the Javonte Rashad Penny risk of, will those guys be giving us production at the top of the season? I think that is up for debate. So Chuba, as a guy who I think we both feel pretty strongly is going to have some kind of standalone role right out of the gate and still give us that contingent upside, I think he pairs well with, say, a more, risky injury room with Javonte and Penny. Whereas Spears, I think is going to most likely be more of a true handcuff behind Derrick Henry.
I think that's true. They are raving about him in Tennessee. He was, so good that people thought he might go even earlier in the draft. And yet, we know the Titans just love to run Henry out there, and he's been so good. With the way the Titans are set up, it's really hard to take him off the field. I think that's a perfect way that you did that there.
Yeah. I assume you would have been, would you have been excited to pull the trigger on Mims or Tyquan at that spot over the running back, or would you have wanted to still prioritize RB there?
I really like those 2 guys. I was hoping that we would be able to get Mims, but
yeah. Mims at 160.
Chuba probably comes back, but
yeah, probably there. So our team right now, 1-4-6-3. We have 4 more picks. Jared Goff at quarterback, Akers, Javonte, Rashad Penny. I will stop recapping. Tajay Spears does make it back to us if we do want to lock him up, unless you see something else.
No, I think that's the way I would go. If you want to look exclusively at the running back group there, I mean, if you prefer
Jerome Ford's the ADP faller, that would be the only other thing there.
And he's interesting. I like him. I wrote an article saying people should draft him. I don't have a ton of exposure, and he seems even less likely to give us early production than Spears.
Okay. Yeah. That's actually interesting. I guess in my head, I've been telling myself that Jerome Ford is going to be the guy in passing situations, just with how reluctant they've been to use Chubb in that capacity. Is that not how you're viewing him?
Probably not. I think that there's that possibility. And one of the things that we saw was that even last year when his production fell off and his usage fell off, that Hunt did have a total expected point role. So when you look at his workload through the lens of, how many points would this likely give us, it was still viable as a standalone. But I think that once you take another step down or you move to a guy who is less proven, and really Ford doesn't have some of those things in his background that we usually are looking for from breakout guys late. I mean, he's not somebody who was a star at a different level per se. When we work back through it with him and we think about how that Browns offense is expected to evolve and become more centered around Deshaun Watson, I don't know that that role is going to necessarily be there, even though I like him as a late pick.
Yeah, that makes sense. We do my dream of getting another Brock Purdy share with Debo, that dream dies here. Looking at some really interesting followers, Irv Smith here sliding 30 picks past ADP is pretty wild there. I'm trying to check the Burrow drafter. They have not pulled the trigger on Irv Smith. But kind of to recap as we enter the home stretch here, 3 more picks. We are at a 2 quarterback build. I assume, Shawn, this is still feeling like a 3 QB build for you with Jared Goff as our only guy. Did I lose you there, Shawn?
It is, and I do. Okay. It is, and I do like a couple of names that we have available to us late.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you in that. I believe I know the names you're thinking of here too. Do we want to get our non-QB selection here at 16 and then round it out with 2 QBs late? Oh yeah, man, this is going to be
that we can risk it on the QB if you have a running back that you like.
I know you do you want to play Jeff Wilson here and pray Dalvin Cook doesn't go there? I'm still not buying that, but is there another name that jumps out to you?
Let's go with somebody else. How about another Chase Brown or taking one of the QBs?
All right. I'm sorry, Shawn. Your audio was cutting out, adding even an extra level of drama here as we round out these selections. There's no worse feeling in the world than having Jeff Wilson in the queue as Shawn saying, let's go with someone else. We did select Jeff Wilson though here. Sorry, Shawn. Your internet literally cut out right as you said, don't take Jeff Wilson there. Luckily, I do know the mission here, though, for rounding out these last few picks at quarterback. To recap our team here, as Shawn gets situated, we have a 1-6-6-3 build. I do not know if I've ever had this configuration through 17 rounds. Jared Goff at quarterback, running backs Cam Akers, Javonte Williams, Rashad Penny, Chuba Hubbard, Tajay Spears, Jeff Wilson. Sorry, Shawn. Wide receiver, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Deebo Samuel, Drake London, Jahan Dotson, Jameson Williams. Tight ends, T.J. Hawkinson, Greg Dulcich, Sam LaPorta here at tight end. Are you back, Shawn? Oh, no. Looks like Shawn is still having technical difficulties. I am with Matt here. I hope this team isn't Chase Brown away from first. I'm going to lose sleep at night when the Dolphins sign Dalvin Cook and Chase Brown is announced as the starter for the Bengals. It will be a tough scene there. Shawn, are you back?
Yeah, sorry about the technical difficulties. My experience here is that when you have a little disagreement there, or not disagreement, but when you have technical difficulties, it tends to work in your favor. So I'm very excited about having Jeff Wilson. I think that's going to be the pick that wins it for us. I mean, that's not going to be the pick. This right here is going to be the pick, but excited about Jeff Wilson.
This is a Sam Howell kind of day. I don't even have to confer with you about him being the pick there. The chat was astonished that I had 17% of him, and that was before drafting him with Pat earlier as well. So the Sam Howell steam, we are off the rails with how much we're selecting Sam Howell these days, Shawn.
In the draft I did last night, I set up a whole bunch of quarterback elements late, and then I think someone autoed Brock Purdy in round 17. And so I had to come back with Sam Howell in the 18th round with just the San Francisco receiver opposite, But I mean, Sam Howell at almost any price by himself, I don't care. That's the way to play it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's I was talking about with Pat. Pat has been the voice of reason. Hey, Jacoby Brissett's gonna get some starts here. But yeah, it does, the way it works out where in a lot of drafts, comes a point where a commander or a Niner is the best pick available. That just seems to happen a lot. The Niners, obviously a team with a ton of options, and the way that those guys are kind of feathered throughout the rounds. I do find myself having a lot of those guys. And then you're in these 3 QB builds, and then lo and behold, Sam Howell's the guy. I am a little bummed out to miss out on Desmond Ridder there. Was really hoping we could stack him up with Drake London as our third quarterback. Shawn, can you pull a quarterback out of your hat here for us at the end?
Well, I was wanting to do some Mac Jones things, and they just never quite materialized. I think that, his value doesn't make any sense to me. If we wanted to just go with Goff and Howell, then, we could add to a different position, but none of the receivers that I like have really fallen to this point either. You could do a 4 tight end build, but I don't know how necessary that is. Let's do something crazy here, Pete.
Trey Lance is what is crazy. Is there, or do you just want to do unselect or unstacked Mac Jones, or Ryan Tannehill getting traded to? 3 seconds. What do you want?
Let's go unstacked Mac Jones.
Okay, that's probably the prudent move here. Let's see here. Did we get? This I don't really blame Dino Core here. They had Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts and no other quarterbacks. So, if I had had time to hawk the board, maybe I would have said, hey, let's take Ridder first and then see if Howell comes back. But I just kind of glanced at ADP and knowing that Ridder goes undrafted in a lot of drafts. But I think had we given a close look to this team out of the 11 hole, we would have known Ridder was not coming back.
Yeah, and I think that the blame for that has to fall on me and losing connection with the draft about at the Jerome Ford, Paris Campbell selection there, and not saying, let's get our 2 QBs in and come back with the other player in round 18. That was my fault. But again, these things tend to work out. It's going to be that Jeff Wilson pick that launches us to the title.
I love it. 3663. Shawn, of all the things in the world where they're having connection issues, maybe a submersible down in the Titanic, I would say you losing connection on a Jeff Wilson versus Chase Brown pick is a far lower stakes. So I'm thankful that you and I are not at the helm of a submarine rescue mission right now. But we did just finish this draft here. Another wild Shawn Siegele draft. I wouldn't have it any other way. End up with the hyper rare 3663 build. Jared Goff at quarterback, along with Sam Howell and Mac Jones. Our running backs, Cam Akers, Javonte Williams, Rashad Penny, Chuba Hubbard, Tajay Spears, Jeff Wilson. Our wide receivers, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Deebo Samuel, Drake London, Jahan Dotson, and Jameson Williams. And then our 3 tight end build, Hawkinson, Dulcich, LaPorta. Aside from a few of the snipes we already talked about, Ridder and Jeff Wilson stuff, how do you feel about this overall team?
I like it. Again, I think the only thing that I would change would be to have internet that worked. I think it's so much fun to do some teams that work through in a little bit of a different direction. You see a couple of the names who are available there still when the draft ends in a Trey McBride. That makes you question a little bit the earlier tight ends and not deciding even to say to go with a 4th tight end to get us a player off the other side of the 2 Eagles that we drafted 1-2 to start. But Mac Jones, you look at what he did as a rookie, what he did in his final year in college, what they're talking about right now. I think that he's going to be a riser. We want to be a little bit careful in just saying, oh, the players that we picked are going to rise, but I don't think it's going to be possible to get these prices on Sam Howell for sure. And then Mac Jones, someone who I see as the same basic value as the quarterbacks going in that round 10 to 12 range. And so if I can put him onto the teams late, now we had talked a little bit about getting Tyquan if he had gotten a couple more spots. As a result, we end up fairly weak at receiver from a bodies standpoint, especially since we drafted a suspended player. Pete, that would be my question for you. How do you feel about our receivers? How do you feel about how we executed the 0 RB? Are you comfortable with what we got, knowing that we didn't add a 7th player on at the end?
Yeah, I think if we went back knowing, in a perfect world, I think I would feel much better about, still this room feels like it needed 6 running backs. I guess we could have stopped at 5. I am with you though. This room seems like having a Curtis Samuel tacked on with Jahan Dotson, getting a Tyquan Thornton stacked there, or even a one-off Marvin Mims, I think would have rounded this out nicely. But I do like that we didn't force a wide receiver selection there at the end that we didn't like. But yeah,
the name I was looking at was Devontae Parker, and since we've drafted him together before, I was like, no. I mean, Devontae Parker, one of those shares is the limit for our drafts together.
And I think that's the hard thing too, where, and Leone did a lot of great research on this too. And your teams, that third quarterback, the huge value with it, obviously you're papering over not having an elite guy with an extra body, but it's also the stacking benefit that really supercharges the team relative to how these contests are structured. And you get the Jared Goff week, you get the Sam Howell week, but this is how I'm going to think about it, Shawn. Someone tell me when the Eagles play the Patriots. I'm going to try to galaxy brain Mac Jones as the piece that goes off when our Eagles pieces go off. That's our galaxy brain stack there. But Shawn, always a blast drafting teams with you. I know you've been pumping out content over at Rotoviz. You had a really good article over the weekend that I appreciated for my Avalanche rooms, where you went through your 5 favorite wide receiver sleepers that are all going late. It doesn't even include Tyquan Thornton and Rondell Moore because those guys have already gotten too expensive. You really went digging deep. Anything else people should check out over on Rotoviz this week?
We're going to have some more articles like that dive into how you play these really difficult sections of the draft, not structurally, but from a player perspective. Also have Best Ball Workshop articles coming out both in Underdog and for FFPC. Got some Superflex pieces out there right now. The Superflex tournament, Pete, is just so much fun because there are so many different ways you can play it. I mean, you and I like to do crazy drafts on the Best Ball breakfast, but I mean, that's nothing compared to what you can do when we're looking at fading quarterbacks in Superflex. So have some pieces out there, again, evidence-based, but also looking at it from a logical perspective. How can we expect history to inform? And then how do we have to adjust? And Pete, that's probably the most fun thing about 2023 is we have such great information out there. Our roster construction explorers across a variety of sites will help you understand what works and specifically what has worked. But we also want to be looking at how things have shifted and how you would adjust to that. And one of the things I was going to potentially mention for us today is that because of those articles that have come out recently, I feel like there are some ways that we can do a hyper fragile pivot, even in an Avalanche room. If we had gotten an Avalanche room today, we could have tried that. Obviously, we're going to get some in the future, so we'll be able to make some of those pivots. So how can we work through both what history tells us, but also have sort of the courage to draft teams that historically would not have won, but they were drafted into environments where it didn't make sense, where now in 2023 it might. So we work through those types of elements. Ben Gresh and I have a new Stealing Bananas on the running back dead zone. Obviously, Ben has been very influential with that, and that's especially relevant in 2023. Colin and I are drafting in the FFPC tournaments against the OT Listener League, and some of those drafts have gotten quite a bit of attention as being controversial. So I know listeners and viewers will enjoy those as well.
I have seen some of those tweets referencing the Rotoviz drafts. Appreciate you guys all hanging out today. A couple other things here. What am I forgetting? I will be hopping on Swolecast in a little bit. We're going to draft another Best Ball Mania team with missions. We'll be back tonight on Ship Chasing, as you guys know. Oh, this is what I wanted to say. The way I've been doing the audio for these shows, because I know the audio listeners need to get their fix. The first draft with Pat goes on my podcast feed. That's the In a Vacuum podcast feed. I've been posting all my drafts there. And then this draft specifically, though, this one is on the Rotoviz podcast feed. So you guys can catch that one there. Make sure you're subscribed to Rotoviz. That's where you also get the overtime pod. You'll get the Stealing Bananas with Gretchen Shawn. You'll get Curtis and Dave going through some recent picks that I was listening to them talk about as well. So all kinds of good stuff over on the Rotoviz feed. Make sure you are subscribed to that. Make sure you're subscribed to Rotoviz. Such great work getting pumped out there on the reg. Shawn, appreciate you joining as always. We are here every single Wednesday, back-to-back drafts with Pat Kerrane and Shawn Siegele. This is Best Ball Breakfast. This is the Best Ball Banana Stand. For Shawn, I'm Pete. We'll see you guys next Wednesday.